Very few people get to actually fly an airplane. But one person that can do it could be you. Stay tuned for this one, everybody. Welcome back, everybody, to Your Little Castle Show. We do get to enjoy sharing highlights of our little planet here with some of the coolest, fun people on the planet. Ann McLaughlin, Bob Mader. When we have this casual conversation, it's Bob, he said. I said, all right, well, we can edit the titles. There you go for our discussion today. If you missed that first interview, lots of great information there about what it really takes to be a pilot. And it's not as hard as you may think. There's definite work involved, but I thought it would be thousands and thousands of hours, or at least hundreds, but 40 hours minimum.
FAA minimums.
To get qualified, but you still have to pass the test. And that's what you say. You make sure, what percentage, I'm throwing it out, I didn't ask him this question, let's see what the answer is. What percentage of people pass it the first time?
I should know that because I used to be chairman of the National Association of Flight Instructors. Unfortunately, the numbers aren't as good as we'd like. There's been, because there's been a lot of pressure on the flight training industry.
Sure. That's good.
Well, it's good, but on the other hand, there's been some concerns about the pass rate. It's not, the first time pass rate is not as high as we'd like it. I don't want to quote a number right now.
I say if it's over 20%, I'd be kind of surprised.
No, it's well over 20.
It's well over.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say it's in the high 70s right now, but
I was going to say 80.
Yeah, I honestly have to look.
Okay, well that's almost.
But we would rather have it, but we'd really rather have it in the mid 90s.
Would be nice.
On the first time.
Okay.
We should be presenting candidates who are ready to pass the test. That's our job.
Okay.
And I say we as the flight instructor community.
That's encouraging too.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about something I wanted to clarify. Overall cost is around $18,000 after it's all said and done, and then you are a licensed airplane pilot.
Yes.
Yes.
But it can be less than that, and it's not something you have to just go, here's $18,000.
No.
There's payment plans available.
You
can pay as you go.
Pay as you go. Yeah, we're not trying to get into anybody's pocket that way or anything like that. And the reason I quote 18,000 is that's a deliberately high number. Mm-hmm. I'd rather surprise somebody at the end of the process where they say, "Hey, I got some money left over here," and then the other way around and say, "Well, we're not quite there yet."
Yeah.
Okay. One's a much less painful conversation than the other.
Overpromise and under rather than
yeah.
Overpromise rather than underdeliver. You know the phrase, everybody. Yeah. You know the thing. But literally, like, people would come in and say, 2,000. Wait a minute, now we're up to how much do you need? You don't want to nickel and dime people like that. Let's be up front. Here's the overall.
Yeah.
So somebody else
Absolutely.
might say, I'll just tell them a low number and get them in here, but that's not the goal.
We have a very good word of mouth at Gateway, and there's a reason for it. Yeah. You know, we keep our reputation, and we're there for the students. It's, yes, we're a business. We need money to make money kind of thing, but we're not trying to nickel and dime anyone. We're upfront with the costs, and if things maybe aren't going the way they were originally quoted, we'll sit down and have a meeting with them to explain what's happening and how we can make it better.
Yeah. Depends how much people study and train, and
it does.
Yeah.
Self-study and all that stuff.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'll add is that, look, I probably, the certificates in my pocket, I can't speak for Ann, but the certificates in my pocket, they're not licenses in the U.S., by the way, they're pilot certificates, but that's just me being pedantic.
Yeah.
Specific,
we want to know that.
I'd say I've probably spent upwards $70,000, $80,000 for everything I've got in my pocket, and it's well spent. I'm not complaining at all.
You get paid to train people.
Yeah, but I get paid. But my point is that we're aware that this is not cheap, and we want our clients to get a dollar or more back for every dollar they spend. If that makes sense.
How would you? What's the ROI? How do you calculate that?
It's a soft ROI. It's a value. It's a value.
Yeah. Right.
Look. I own a very expensive cell phone. If I can mention a brand name, I will. But there's a reason I own that rather than a cheap flip phone, because I get the value I want out of that phone.
Right.
Same deal. We want people to come back and say, "Wow, yeah, it wasn't cheap, but boy, it was thorough, and I got everything and more than I thought I would."
Well, I might liken it to I worked in marketing and with a travel company for a long time, and travel is 100% cost. There's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
nobody getting any ROI back financially.
I can't sell you a bucket of tourism.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the equivalent. Like, but here it's not just get on a plane, wait for people to get you there, book the hotels, have fun with your friends. But people spend a lot of money on that. Here, it's like the next level. That you're flying the plane, you're taking yourself to a place. You can go on your own vacation
Yes.
with your wife or spouse, husband.
Yeah.
Are you, and ends up married someday. Are you married?
Not married currently.
So she can bring her husband, future husband, and then enjoy a time together and fly yourself.
Yeah.
That really is a great value
Yeah.
with the overall experiences that we used to talk about when you were going on
My
vacation.
my first long trip after I got 5 days after I got my private certificate, I flew from Waukegan, which is north of Chicago, to north of Luther in the Bahamas.
Did you hear that, everybody? Bahamas.
And
Not Bahama, Missouri.
No,
Is there
I'm-
such thing as Bahama?
who knows? There's a
Or Mexico, Missouri.
but anyway,
Yeah.
but no, this is I'm
Moscow,
talking
Missouri.
I'm talking about the Caribbean, and it was with a bunch of experienced pilots. I wouldn't have dreamed of doing that. It was a club trip, a club I belonged to in Chicago. But the point is that it was 5 days after I got my private.
Wow.
So
Private license. Okay. That's what we're talking about. When the overall, what is something worth? What's the value? To be able to fly your own plane. It's like, I was just looking today, and I think this was coincidence. I'm down in my kitchen looking out, and there's this beautiful little bird. I'm like, how long have we been? And up until the Wright brothers, right?
Yeah.
1908 or whatever it was.
1903.
1903. Okay, I was within 5 years. Closer. But he's the aviation expert, so I'm like.
I'm no expert.
But literally, like, I mean, how fascinated have we been since the beginning of time with
Yeah.
being able to fly? And now we finally can. And for you to, okay, but I can have somebody else fly me. Now I get to fly myself. I mean, that's really empowering and just one of those experiences in life. When I flew the plane with you, Bob, I was just like, this is a once in a lifetime. And I'm a little, one of those guys, like, I was in a bad accident, so I'm always a little bit, but when I got up there, I was just like, I know I'm in good hands, so I shouldn't worry about that. Any normal person probably would for their first flight.
Right.
But when I went up there, I'm like, I'm with an expert, might as well enjoy this thing. And boy, what unbelievable experience.
And you asked in the previous segment, you asked Annie what drives her passion. One of the things I tell every one of my students, and they say, "What does this for you?" Well, I like training students and enjoy it. I love seeing them succeed. That's icing on the cake. That's the best part. If it's German chocolate cake, it's that really good rich German chocolate. But the cake itself still tastes pretty good, because what I like to tell them all is I like to see the houses get small. It's fun.
The view, you were talking about how enjoyable the view was. It never gets old.
No.
Every single time I'm teaching a student, I look out and I'm like, look at this, and I was just out 30 minutes ago with another student, but it's beautiful every single time. It never gets old.
Well, I appreciate that, because that is literally what we're trying to help people understand. And with that, I'll jump in a little early this time. Last show we started a little bit late with our break. Here we'll start it a little bit early. And I'm going to show everybody my own footage where I said, I followed protocol. Bob, I am giving you control of the plane. And Bob said,
I have the controls.
I have the controls. So you must communicate those things to each other. Important when you're flying a plane. And I took my 4K camera, which we have right here too. I had it pre-prepped, sitting there ready to go. Turned it. Check out this footage, everybody. This was pretty cool. Well, there we go. That's what I call excitement. I mean, and just something that you just get. There's nothing like being able to record your own view of the arch and Busch Stadium, all right there, for my own. For my own camera up at a plane where I was actually at the time I was not flying. Everybody, we make that passive comment about when you're texting during the car, when you're driving a car, you're not driving the car.
Right.
So that car may be going on its own, and likewise in a plane, you don't want to take your hands off. Bob took over, and I was actually flying until we got to that point.
Yeah.
Bob took it off the ground, got us up to where we were, and he says, "Take over."
500 feet.
500 feet. And I was like, "All right, here we go."
Yeah.
It handled it. It was the thermal flares were interesting because it causes a little bit of vibration, but after you kind of get, it's not much of that.
No.
Once you get above that, then it's just like you're.
It was a great day to fly.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And yeah, the thermal flares, I think, for a lot of people, if they've only flown commercial, getting in the smaller planes, you're like, oh, you're feeling it a little bit more. And I compare it kind of being on a boat.
Yeah. Yeah, having grown up along Lake Michigan, yeah, that's a good analogy because, if you go out in a 40-footer versus one of the big cross the lake ferries, it's a different ride.
Yeah.
But they're both safe.
Right. Well, good stuff. All right, we were going to play our little clip for the community right now, so we'll jump into that real quick, and we'll come back here after a quick little spot that we did at share. I have sponsors, and people said, Carter, you got to share a little bit more of the story and why you do this. So take a listen to this real quick.
His name is Carter Rethwich, but in St. Louis, he's known as the Cardinal Cowboy. He's a well-known fixture in the stands at sporting events in the Gateway City. He's one of its greatest cheerleaders, a super fan like no other. When he makes his rounds at almost every home game, he shares his love for sports with the rest of fandom with a smile, a cheer, some positive encouragement, and lots of selfies and pics. But the Cardinal Cowboy was born of a tragic incident. Rethwich was an aspiring athlete in high school and college. He dreamed of playing in the big leagues, but those dreams ended when he and 3 of his college friends were hit with a devastating crash by a 5-time drunk driver. One of his best friends died. Carter suffered a critical head injury. The trauma put him in a coma for 6 days. The doctors said he was never expected to function again. Those expectations never came true. He fought back and finished college. He was determined to prove the doctors wrong. Among other inspirations, it was his love of baseball that kept him going. And from his near-death experience, the Cardinal Cowboy emerged. His goal in life became to inspire others with positivity despite the odds, to help people believe in themselves and achieve their dreams.
So after my coma, I realized that it was up to me if I was going to accomplish my goals, if I was going to reach my dreams. Despite what the naysayers would say, the people that were discouraging me, like they do everyone, it's up to me if I'm going to make it. Don't listen to the naysayers. It's up to you. You decide whether you're going to succeed, whether you're going to reach your goals. Dream, and then always, always chase your dreams. Never give up. Giddy up. Well, there you go. We were talking about during my flight. I've obviously recovered. That's what we try to help people motivate themselves to aspire to accomplish anything, including maybe I can become a pilot someday, everybody, even after a horrible accident that the doctors had given me less than 50-50 odds to survive. And then when I started getting attention, I realized how I can help other people to then get attention. So that's what we do. We put guests on our show and share the good things they're doing in our community. So thanks you guys for coming here. Let's finish up here. We've got about 13 minutes left. Got still a lot to cover, everybody. We talked about this in our in-between break. We were in the bullpen for a couple minutes. We call it the bullpen. We were just still sitting here, everybody. But the bullpen break. What's the biggest mistake? There's a lot of people that, when they're considering this, what's the big mistake they make? And I came up with a couple, and you're like, well, that's a mistake. But let me tell you the big mistake. You guys want to share with what we talked about?
Yeah. What we were talking about really for the biggest mistake, I would say, is not pairing with the proper instructor. It happens. Everyone's an individual. We have our own different personalities. And sometimes a student instructor, maybe they're just not meshing. It doesn't mean they're actually fighting or anything. The example I gave is, if I have a student and we're working on a lesson and maybe my verbiage just isn't getting across to them, say they're a boater and they understand things more in that verbiage, I could send someone over to Bob who's going to word the lesson a little differently than me and be able to get that information across more effectively. And so we do that at Gateway. We have primary instructors who work with the students, and we put them together to where the schedule always works for them and that they're getting the best instructor for themselves. So, if you're going through your flight training, making sure that you have the proper instructor, that you guys are getting along well and the lessons are going very fluid.
Yeah. The analogy I use is that, and you experience this yourself, it's like learning to play, having a piano teacher sitting next to you, and now we've put you in a box and you can't get out of that box until the lesson stops. So you want to have a good personality match. I think the other big mistake that people make, and it's self-inflicted, if you don't study, if you don't take the time to really learn the material, and also tell your instructor, if you're going into this, tell your instructor, if they don't ask you, tell your instructor how you learn. This is how I learn things. Because I've had some people who are very visual. I've had people who are book-oriented. They all learn well. It's finding out what their learning style is, and I have to adapt to them. That's our job, to adapt to them. And I do ask them to meet me halfway. But if you don't tell me, and one other thing, and I just encountered this in an extreme form last summer. If you're afraid of something in the flight training area, because we do put you in situations that are not dangerous, but they teach you how to handle emergencies. And I had one student who was terrified of a particular maneuver. It's a very benign maneuver, but he was afraid of it. He had built it up into something far more than it was. And we had done that during the lesson because we were trying to work through it, and we landed and we were at the fuel pump refueling the aircraft, and he was just drenched in sweat, and it wasn't a particularly hot day, and I looked at him and said, "Are you afraid of this?" "Yes." And I said, "Are you afraid to tell me you're afraid?" And he broke down crying, literally. And he finally said, "Yes, I'm so worried that you don't think highly of me." I said, "I don't care if you're afraid. I know how to deal with that. We'll work on that problem. But if you don't tell me you're afraid, I can't help you, because now it's all masked. Right. Tell me what's going on. I can't." Those are the mistakes. Those are I think the big mistakes. Is not, not communicating with your instructor, not telling them how you learn, and again, to Ann's point, and it's also one of my favorite points, make sure you're a good mesh.
True. Yeah, communication is always the key. That's what I went to college and grad school for. Communication. There's so many problems come about just because people do not properly communicate. It could be a matter of they're intimidated by the fact they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't
Exactly.
They don't want to seem like they don't know what they're doing, and you got to cut through that and say, "Hey man, we're about to fly a plane here. Let's make sure that we're all on the same page for all of this."
Yeah.
Communication again, very very important. Well, tell me that with regard to your industry, technology is something I talk about quite a bit. I'm a techie nerd. So I'll share with everybody a little bit about. If you have seen the book Magnetized Media, Cardinal Cowboy wrote the foreword right there, #1 seller on Amazon. If you'd like to learn about how to magnetize your media, grab this book. I wrote the foreword. I essentially wrote this card. You wrote the first chapter. It's more like a chapter. I said, well, I just wanted to emphasize how important it is that you use this new thing called media these days. And so this is one great guide. It literally is like page by page with bullet points and things you can. Here we are, page 18 before we get done with what I wrote. But in here you get all these steps that really show you. But how has technology overall changed the way aviation is done? And there's new like the particular plane, when you stand on the outside that I flew, you're like, okay, it's a little bit older plane. But when I looked at the instruments, some of those were like weeks old, I think, some of the technology and gauges and stuff.
Maybe a few days.
and her dad just upgraded the cockpit.
Yeah.
Can I take this one?
You can take this one. Go right ahead.
I've been doing this for a little while. What's changed is we've gone from what we call steam gauges to digital, what you saw. Steam gauges are they're traditional round dials and all that. They're called steam gauges, steam locomotives, or steamboats. The important thing that has not changed is physics. Airplanes still fly the same way they did 100 and some years ago. Okay, I can't do the math in my head during an interview, but a wing generates lift, and the airplane flies. A glider flies the same way. So what's happened is that technology has augmented situational awareness, has helped the pilot, but it's not a crutch. One of the first things that we do, for example, I use an iPad in flight. It has a moving map.
I saw that, yeah.
It's a chart. They're not called maps in aviation. It's a chart, and with all the airspace delineated and all that. And it's got a little GPS thing on there that says where we are. We turn that off with our students, and we tell them, you need to be able to look outside, look at that chart, and say, this is where I am right now. You need to be able to read the chart, because everything else is backup or an assistance.
Supplement, yeah.
A supplement. That's a better word. But Ann, you grew up in the newer generation. What do you think?
Yeah,
You grew up with all these toys.
You know, it's funny because I grew up in the newer generation with all the toys, but all of my instructors are, I think, like you, old school. And I'm like that now as well with my students, because it's really easy to take, you know, these steam gauges, everything we work with, and teach the students the basics of flying with the technology, and then add the newer technology in as they progress as students to where they're not using technology as a crutch, but as a supplement for safety, making it a safer environment. And the FAA is getting more and more involved on that as well, you know, doing more technology in the fields as far as GPS and satellite usage.
Angle of attack indicators, which is
Exactly.
which is a series of, that's a 4-week series right there. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they've gone, you know, when you go to the airlines and stuff, and even just your cargo carriers, you have amazing. And what you flew in, the Beechcraft Sundowner, has a new, you know, glass cockpit with a lot of new Garmin instruments, and it provides a safe experience, no safer than a steam gauge cockpit, but it does provide some extra functions.
Yeah, and so it really comes down to one thing. Fundamentally, aviation is about situational awareness and managing the wing, managing the airplane. I have a highly capable 1978 airplane. I have not upgraded. Matter of fact, it's kind of become a classic. So it's had a couple of avionics upgrades, but we're trying to keep the look and feel 1978. So there's a little bit of glass snuck in there, but the fuel gauges are still analog fuel gauges that work just like they did way back when I was in college.
Pretty well proven technology that is
Yeah.
sustainable. You get an electrical problem with any of the digital stuff, you're out of business, right?
Not
Yeah.
necessarily.
Well,
many
There's
cases.
backups.
Is there battery
There-
backups or?
Yeah, and
how do
the Garmin unit that was flown at both of those battery backups will be like 2 hours if you have an electrical. There is truth too, you know, as you get more advanced, then, you know, you have to be more aware of the issues with the more advanced equipment, but it's not, you know, if the electrical failure happens, you lose everything. That doesn't happen.
Well, unlike a car, if your tire blows out, you're off the side of the road.
Right.
Plane, as long as the plane wings are still attached and everything's still in place, you're not counting on wheels to rotate. You can just glide that thing down. Has there been a time? Have you had an experience where you had to do an emergency landing? Was
Yes.
that Bob.
Both of us probably, yeah.
Okay.
I've had probably my favorite emergency was with an instrument student about, my goodness, 20 years ago now. This happened over at Washington, Missouri, and the engine swallowed a valve, which is exactly what it is. The exhaust valve came loose and went rattling around inside the cylinder. It was running so rough that I was afraid that we were going to tear the engine off the airplane. So I shut the airplane down in flight. That was a nice, typical Missouri summer day, and my student asked me, "Are we going to make it to the airport?" I said, "Well, I can get you to the cornfield. I can definitely guarantee the cornfield. I think I got the runway." And we made the runway, and we landed, and I declared an emergency and all that. And it was no big deal. I landed on the runway, rolling out, and all of a sudden I felt the brakes. And I looked over and said, "What are you doing?" He goes, Well, I'm stopping the airplane. I said, it's 95 degrees out. I don't want to drag this thing off the runway. Let it roll. I'm trying to get to the exit.
Okay, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Perpetual motion there.
Yeah.
You have to go and roll because the engine's not going to pull you forward even when after you landed.
Yeah.
Interesting. You had no experience, but the experiences you have here, they're far and few between, right?
Oh, yeah.
How many thousands
Oh.
of flights or hundreds of flights
Yeah.
have you had?
I've
You've had one or two issues.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on 8,000 hours, and that was the one real true emergency.
Okay.
And even then, it was no big deal. Okay, we're going to land.
Land it, and if you had to, a cornfield.
Yeah.
You said
Oh,
people
yeah.
do that on regular. That's like their intended place to land at times.
Well, a lot of farmers
Can
have
be.
private strips.
Yeah. There's a lot all over Missouri. We'll be flying around during lessons, and I'll point out, I'm like, you see that grass field right down there? That's a private airport. So they're dotted all over.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So there's many more opportunities to put down a plane safely
Oh, yeah.
than most people realize.
Yes.
And as I understand, is this true? There are strips of the highways across the country that are deliberately set to be straight 200 yard.
Part of Eisenhower's interstate program was setting up runways.
Say, hey, watch out, everybody, get off the road because we're going to
Yeah.
land a
Yeah.
plane here as an emergency option. And boy, how does the whole highway system? And now we've got aviation, and our ability to travel versus any time over 100 years ago
Yeah.
is dramatically different now.
We're very
It
fortunate.
is.
Yes.
All right, we've got a couple minutes left here. Let's talk about a few more important things that I know people might be interested. First off, would be what is the process? They go, hey man, this sounds like fun. I got some experts here. I know what we're going to do. I want to do this. How do they get started?
So our big thing is the discovery flight. You know, you have that interest, that passion, but maybe you've never been in a single engine, plane before. So we have a discovery flight. For us, we have a metro flight. It's our special offer at Gateway, which is what you went on. And it takes you around the St. Louis airspace, and you get to learn how to navigate, how to fly the aircraft, your basic attitudes. And so you fly with an instructor during this flight lesson. You have the flight controls 500 feet off the ground, and you're flying and you're learning, and
You take the controls at 500
Yeah,
feet.
you take the
Yeah, we're not
controls.
flying at 500, yeah.
yeah, you take the controls at 500 feet, continue to climb up, and it's a flight where you get to figure out, oh yeah, after landing, I love this. This is what I'm gonna do. And so then we work through with the student on how exactly they're gonna do it. We go through the medical process, getting their medical approved. They get approved by the FAA through the processing. I don't have to get too much into that.
Yeah.
And then we start their flight lessons. We use, a standard curriculum to get their students and trying to get them in the minimum hours, but the highest quality of those hours.
There it is, everybody. We've done 2.5 hours now. Gatewayflight.com. Call them 314-780-7899. Google search, they come right up. Say hi to Bob or Ann and learn some more how to fly. Everybody, giddy up.